So my name is Emma Dowie. I'm a Marketing and Communications Manager at IntelliCorp. I'm based in the UK. And with me on the call is our Senior Application Engineer, Alison Denning. She's based in the USA. Just a couple of housekeeping things this morning. So all the lines are muted. So if you have any questions during the WebEx, then please submit them to myself in the chat box. What we'll do is answer your questions at the end of the session, so once Alison has done the demo, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. If we don't get to your questions, then we'll email you and follow up at the end. And yep, we'll be recording the session as well, so we'll send that out and the slides afterwards to you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alison. I think Alison is with this one. Okay, Alison?
Okay, thank you, Emma. Well, welcome to everyone to the WebEx today. We'll go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about Live Compare for Smart Lifecycle Management. And the Live Compare tool, some of you that are on the line are customers. Some of you are looking at it as maybe you want to look at prospective purchase of Live Compare. But what Live Compare is an analytical tool for your SAP system. And you can see by this slide it works with many of the different SAP platforms. So ECC, BW, SCM, your CRM system, HCM, and we can help you with a multitude of things around SAP lifecycle events. So looking at things like your custom releases, your support packs and enhancement packs, being able to identify what's going to be impacted on your system. When you're going to HANA or S4HANA, helping you understand what code in your system is not HANA compliant. And then also things like consolidating SAP systems and understanding where there's differences, security and audit related issues. There's also a piece around synchronization in Live Compare that really helps you dive into the DNA of your SAP system and understand where you have differences between objects, looking at your dev to QA to production instance. And then obviously EWM as well. And then looking at upgrades when you're upgrading your system, where there's going to be impacts that you should be taking a look at. Some of the other ones you can see, etc. Today, though, mainly we're going to be focusing on the EWM piece of things. So Live Compare sits on a pretty standard Windows server and reaches out to your SAP system via RFC. So it's a pretty straightforward setup. It's something that can be set up in a couple or a few hours and be ready to run some of those lifecycle events that we just talked about. So installing Live Compare is a relatively easy thing to do. So let's talk about smart impact analysis. And with Live Compare, we've been doing smart impact analysis for quite some time now. But the idea behind smart impact analysis is that we can help you focus your testing. And by helping you focus your testing, we can help you lower your total cost of ownership of your SAP system when you're introducing change by custom transports or support packs or enhancement packs. So the smart impact analysis piece looks at all of the transactions on your system that are used. And when you're introducing those custom development transports or support packs from SAP, the next thing that we're going to do after we figure out your used transactions is help you understand which of those transactions are going to be impacted by those changes that you're making to your system. So it's key to look at the impacted transactions and programs so that we can tell you exactly what to go out and test. And then we get down to the most at risk, which is a formula that runs on Live Compare to help you understand for each of those changing objects on the transport, one executable on your system may cover multiple changing objects. So we can really help you reduce the number of executables that you need to test on your system. And anytime you can get away from a full regression test and actually focusing your testing on what's actually changing is going to be a good thing. So getting down to that most at risk has always been key for us. Our customers have seen about an 85% reduction in test scope, which is significant. So when we talk about the extended warehouse management system, what's used in EWM? RFUI is the predominant transaction in EWM. So our impact analysis telling you to test that one transaction is not going to help you with your testing that much. So what do we compute as most at risk? Well, RFUI. So we knew we had to have a way of going into your system and getting down to a more granular level to be able to help you with the EWM system. One transaction was not going to do it. And that brings up the supermassive transaction problem. So we all know that RFUI is a far-reaching transaction. And if we take a look at what the EWM Smart Impact Analysis looks like, you always start with that transaction up at the top. So RFUI has many different process paths that you can go through to get to the processes that you're looking at in your system. So as we take a look at this and going in through some of the UI navigation and getting to those actions or steps that you're running on your system, we know that there's functions, process after input functions that are used, and then many layers of ABAP stuff, and then the changing object that's coming in from that transport or support pack or enhancement pack from SAP. So Live Compare is able to go out and look at the links between these actions and steps and functions, and then down to the changing object from the support pack or development transport that you're introducing to your system. So for EWM, we knew we had to get more granular than just saying you use this transaction. So what we did was we looked at using the UPL data. And the UPL data records the use of these functions. So we knew that if we could identify the functions that were used, we could identify the actions that were used in EWM. Each action has a unique set of functions that are used. So each time we see that UPL data where we record those functions, we know the actions that are going to be used, and we can address those in the impacted executables to go out and test. So this is just showing you the path of a process, the action, the steps, the functions that you record in UPL, and then the changing object that would be coming in from the SAP system. So what does the Smart Impact Analysis for Live Compare look like? Well, the first thing we start with is the UPL data. And we know that you have to turn on the UPL data in your SAP system first to get started. Once you have it turned on and it's collecting in your SAP system, we can go into Live Compare and have it automatically download that UPL data to the Live Compare server. So that's a one-time thing to turn that on in your SAP system, and then a one-time thing to turn it on in Live Compare, and then you have that data to use for your Smart Impact Analysis. So once we have the UPL set up and running, we can go out and run the Smart Impact Analysis app and get to those most at-risk actions to test. So with that, let's go ahead and go out and start the demo. Okay, so Live Compare, you're looking at here, sitting on a standard Windows server, reaching out to your SAP systems via RFC. And if we click on those SAP systems, you start to get some more information about them. So the connection, the IMG, there's a performance history data tab. So if you're a current customer, you're probably downloading your performance history data onto this tab so that you have record of it. The UPL data is what we're going to collect for the EWM system. So the UPL data can be set up here. You can go out and update the data from your SAP system, and then you can also schedule it to run daily so that you're saving that information on your Live Compare server. And then once you have this piece set up, It will just be running daily, and you'll have that information to use in your impact analysis. So then Live Compare can be run from workflows and then also apps. So we'll take a look at the app setup for EWM. So this impact for EWM app that we have set up requires minimal input to be able to go out and analyze the change that you're introducing to your SAP system. This app also highlights the integration with HP ALM to discover test assets and gaps. And then it also takes a look at some of the backlog in your development, QA, and business as usual system. So let's take a look at how you create the app or how you run the app. So the first thing you're going to do is set up a new variant for your app, and we'll go ahead and do that one for the EWM impact analysis. So then once we have that set up, there's a couple inputs that we have to put in. We have to put in the development system where the custom development transport sits, or the enhancement pack, support pack sit. So we'll go out and choose that development system. And then the production system is going to be the system that holds the UPL data. And then the transports are the transports that we want to analyze. So you can put in one transport here, which I just have an example for our demo today, or you can put in a list of transports. You can paste it in from Excel or enter them individually. Once you have those three pieces of data put into the app itself, you're ready to run it. You can distribute the results here by putting in an email address. And this is new in the 3.6 release of Live Compare that's coming out at the end of October, the ability to go ahead and distribute the results here on the app. And it also gives you an update on the app running successfully, or if for some reason it's failed, you'll get an email about that as well. So then once you have the email in there, you can go ahead and run your app. So it's going to run and deliver those emails to your inbox once it's finished. And it will give you the status and then also the report that you're looking for. So you can see right here that it's completed and the details are right here. So we can click on that, or we can go back into our app here and refresh and open up our results over here on the right-hand side. So this is the dashboard with all of the results of our analysis. So remember we were talking about the used, impacted, and most at risk? Well, for EWM, the used actions are right here. So there was about, for this particular analysis, about 353. The actions that were impacted by the changing objects to the SAP system lowered that down to about 248 actions. So if you were going to test everything, you would be testing this 353 right here. And if you're going to test just your impacted, you would see about a 30% savings just by looking at the impacted actions. But by using Live Compare, we can help you get to a much lower number by testing just those actions that are most at risk. And so we've lowered that down all the way to 29. So these most at risk actions are the ones that you would hand off to your QA folks and have them go out and test. These actions cover all of the changing objects on the transport that we put in. So you're assured that you're testing the right things. So these 29 most at risk right here, we can use to go out to HPALM and define what test cases are available for us to run that would cover those 29 actions that need to be tested. So when we ran that against the HP ALM system, we found 24 test cases that covered those most at risk. And then we identified 5 gaps. And the gaps are really important because you need to know what you don't have as well on your HPLM system. So we knew from this analysis right here that we needed to go out and create at least 5 test cases to accommodate some of those most at-risk transactions. And then as you look down, the impact analysis history here is just showing you a trend over the last year. So looking at those used, impacted, and most at risk, the used transactions across the board pretty much stayed the same. There wasn't much difference from quarter to quarter. And then as you look at the impacted actions, a little bit of change. It just depends on what you were running at that point in time. So were there a lot of support packs from SAP or a lot of custom development transports? And then the most at risk. But the whole idea here is just so that you can see a trend of what's happening in your the life cycle of your testing in SAP. And then the testable history. So we went from the first time we ran it of having 24 test cases found in your HPLM system to the next quarter going all the way up to 60 and then 74 and increasing that number as each quarter went on. And what's important about this is that you're building the right tests. So instead of trying to go out and create a test case for everything, you're actually creating test cases for objects that you know are going to be impacted. So those actions are the ones that you can write those test cases for to increase your test case library. And then down here we get into just looking at, once you have this process in place where you can easily go from identifying what's going to be impacted in your system to what you actually need to go out and test, you'll start to see a downward trend in the backlog. So the backlog in development versus what's in QA and then in your business as usual or your project system. So that's the dashboard that's created with the EWM output, and then let's go out and take a look at the details here. So the SMART impact analysis details, what you're seeing here is in column A, those are the actions that we've said are the most at risk that you need to go out and test. And then column B is showing you the usage data from the UPL collection. And then column C and D, these are the changing objects from the transport or support pack that you're using. So these are the changing objects that were coming through on this particular transport in this example. So when you take a look at this, we're saying that you need to test this particular action because these 3 classes right here were changing. So when you look at this, one of the questions that you will have is, so what is the difference for this object? And if you use the hyperlink here, you can go right out to a report that shows you the difference between System 1 and System 2. So it'll show you a line-by-line comparison from System 1 to System 2. Perfect. Okay, so this is the side-by-side comparison of that one class that we were looking at. So you can see the class across the top here. On the left-hand side, you have System 1. So this would be our system that we had the custom development transport on or the support packs, et cetera. And then System 2 would be the production system that had the UPL data on it. And what we're doing is comparing that change that has come through on that transport. So it's a line-by-line comparison. You can see over here the lines of code that have been inserted, highlighted in pink for System 2. And if there are any lines of code that are inserted on System 1, you'll see them highlighted in blue. And then the lines that are highlighted in yellow are the same lines of code. It looks like there's just a slight difference to them. So as we go through and click on some of these changes, you start to see where the differences are for this one class in the in your SAP system. So this right here really illustrates the details that Live Compare goes in supporting the SMART impact analysis. So right down to the actual changing of the classes, the methods, et cetera, in your EWM system. And if you're a live compare current customer, there were some links, I think, released in the 3.5 version, but there's going to be a lot more reports that have these hyperlinks in them so that you can go straight from whatever your analysis was into a report that will show you those differences side by side. So that's one of the new things that you'll see coming out. Okay, so a couple key points to take away from this. The whole idea behind the EWM impact analysis is just to help you focus and reduce your testing. So you're really going to focus on the actions that are changing and testing those instead of trying to test everything. And being able to respond to your change fast and with zero defects. So we'll help you understand what's going to be impacted so that when you test, when you do your testing, you're testing the appropriate items and you're including them all. So helping you avoid missing any actions that may need to be tested. And then just adopting an agile approach to EWM change management. So having a process in place that will help take you from identifying what those impacts are all the way through identifying what the test cases are that should be run, etc. So the most at-risk actions to test are key, the smart analytics, the comparison, the side-by-side comparison to be able to show you what is changing on your transport, and then being able to look at upgrades and custom releases as well. And just some other things that Live Compare includes security and governance, being able to go out and identify those issues, your production usage archive, and then helping you with that whole testing aspect and integrating with the HPALM system.
That's great. Thank you very much, Alison. So we just have a few more minutes here before we finish up today, and a couple of questions that have come through the chat. So I'll put those across to you now, Alison. How much UPL data do we need to collect?
A month's worth of UPL data would be sufficient. Obviously, the more UPL data you have, the better coverage you're going to have of what you're using on your system.
Okay, thanks. And do I need to change production configuration?
No, your production configuration won't need to change, with the exception of you are going to turn on UPL in your SAP system to start that collection.
Okay. Is Live Compare certified by SAP?
Yes, Live Compare is a certified product from SAP.
Okay. What if we have customizations in EWM?
The impact analysis will always pick up your customization as well. So any kind of custom actions that you have or customized actions, they'll be included in the analysis, just like any custom transactions or programs would be included in the analysis in ECC or some of the other systems.
Okay, thanks, Alison. So if anybody has any further questions, then you can use the chat to submit those to myself or to Alison. And we've got a couple of minutes left, so I'll leave the chat open, I'll leave the WebEx open. But otherwise, any questions that you want to ask after the demo, then please get in touch. The email addresses are here for both myself and Alison. And there's information online as well at IntelliCorp.com about EWM. And you can follow us on all the regular social media channels. We have a YouTube channel as well where you can find other videos and recordings of the sessions from today and other webinars that we've done as well. So anything you need, then please get in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time today. I'll leave the chat box open for another couple of minutes. Okay, so I have a question come in. How does it determine impacted versus most at risk? It was mentioned earlier. Yeah, if you could elaborate on that, Alison, that would be great.
So the impacted versus most at risk, the impacted transactions, the most at risk transactions, when you think about something that's being used on your system and Live Compare is able to go through and find the links from those actions that are used down to the changing object within SAP. And when you think about those changing objects, one action is able to cover multiple changing objects on the transport. So instead of trying to test every version of the changing, every version of the executable that's called out, one executable could cover many changing objects on your changing transport, so you don't always have to test every single action.
Thanks, Alison. Again, any other questions, then please submit them through the chat. Otherwise, we'll let you get back to your day. Or drop us an email, and we can certainly go into more detail about Live Compare. Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending.